Welcome to Simply Caroline, a podcast dedicated to women empowerment where we will discuss a bunch of different subjects such as life, parenting, love, business, money, relationships, healing, recovery, addiction, entrepreneurship, and so much more. A podcast I'll do my best to keep simple, fun, and relatable and bring you tools to help you better your life. So thank you for being here. And here's your host, myself, Caroline Blanchard. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you for being with us again this week. So we are in our series of suicide awareness, mental health, and addiction. And I have a very special guest here today who, accepted to share her story very vulnerably. Jacquelyn Phillips, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to share my story so that maybe I can help someone else.
Oh, thank you so much. And you have no idea how much I appreciate you being here. I know that when we talk about these subjects, it's always difficult, whether you're out of it, whether you're still in it, it always strikes an emotional chord inside of us because I feel like when we tell our story, we also remember what happened and we remember how we felt. So how about you start a little bit with your story, and here and there I may cut you off just to ask you questions or to clarify things. But what's your
Absolutely.
story, Jacquelyn?
Well, let's start with the day. I had it all planned out. My son had extracurriculars that afternoon. I had a big open window when I was going to be left unattended. And I knew that if I were going to do it, it was going to be this day and it was going to be successful. Fortunately, I didn't. And I didn't wear mascara on purpose because I might cry. I didn't do it because, and I'm going to work this backwards. I didn't do it because I was afraid that my son would be the one to find me.
How old is your
And
son?
I grew up, he just turned 16 last week. So he would have been 9.5 or 10. He was 10 at the time.
Wow.
So it's been a few years. Yeah. Um, it's right here in my house. I walk up and down this set of stairs multiple times a day, the exact spot I had picked out. It's there every day. And be it good or bad, I know what that spot is. And most days I don't even think about it. And I feel like that's a huge victory.
Yes, it is.
Growing up, I had a very traumatic childhood, a lot of insecurity and instability. My mom has mental health disorders. My dad was out of the picture, really never developed really good coping mechanisms. So instead, because I feared good things, because good things never lasted, I got really good at self-sabotage. And I carried that through my teens, into my 20s, into my marriage, into becoming a parent, into owning a business. I was the biggest hurdle in my own way from moving forward in life. And so I would act out and lash out, and I would seek outside stimuli to fill this void in me because I didn't know how to fill it because no one had ever taught me how. Um, and that emptiness is really where behaviors of infidelity and, I didn't abuse drugs and alcohol, but I didn't shy away from them because sometimes I just wanted to be numb. Because sometimes when everything hurts, you just kind of need a break. And I got to a breaking point. My husband was filing for divorce. I had just bought a new business, so my entire savings was gone. My car had just died. It was not repairable. So the floor was falling out from underneath me. And I couldn't picture what my life was going to look like if I kept going this way and getting out of it. It just seemed so nice, like this calm and serene of not having to wake up every morning to the absolute shit show that I had built for myself. But because I didn't realize it, I didn't know that I was responsible, that I could fix it. I didn't know how. It seemed irreparable everywhere, from the dead car to the dead savings to the dead marriage. Nothing looked salvageable. I used to work in healthcare and working ER and trauma. I saw what happens if you don't do suicide correctly. I had a plan. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I had a date picked out where everyone was out of the house for an extended period of time, I knew what was going to happen. I was going to hang myself because anoxia is great and brain death happens pretty quickly, and it was going to work. I had the tools, I had the space, I had the time. I wasn't going to be there to pick up my son, so my husband was going to pick him up. I knew he'd be calling my phone. I just wasn't sure who was going to walk in the door first. And because I couldn't control that one thing, because God help me, I'm the biggest control freak you'll ever meet. Because I couldn't control that one thing, that is the only thing that kept me from going forward.
And I'm gonna
I
say
didn't know
right
myself.
here, like, thank God, because whether your son would have walked in first or second, the devastation of losing his mom
Yep,
would have been beyond.
exactly. And growing up with a traumatic childhood, I couldn't do that to him. I refused. I absolutely refused to do that to him. And he saves my life daily. He has no idea. He is the one thing that keeps me waking up every morning and taking that deep breath and going, you know what? Nothing can be as bad as what would happen to him if I wasn't here. So sit up, shut up, and put to work what you got to do to get through the day.
Thank God.
And it was hard at first. It was so hard. It was coming to terms with who I was and how I got myself in this situation, and getting the therapy and the trauma therapy, and I did ketamine therapy, and I had a life coach, and I had a physician who was behind me the entire time. I understand that I am one of the few rare people that had access to all of those things, and I sought them out and I laid myself bare and said, this is where I'm at. This cannot continue. Help me. And there was a lot of ugliness that we had to work through, and a lot of trauma, and a lot of forgiveness, and a lot of ownership of the absolute piece of garbage human that I had let myself become, because I didn't know that I didn't have to be that. I realized just how lucky I am. You know, you'd think after 6 years that this wouldn't continue to make you cry, and yet here we are.
And you know what? I'm listening to you and I'm holding back my tears because I know how it feels. But before going, further, I just want to go back to two things. Actually, you talked about a therapy, the Carmen therapy,
Ketamine.
ketamine. So I will
Yeah,
want you to explain that just a little bit in the
absolutely.
future. But also, you were working in healthcare and you did see
Oh
some
yeah.
people are arriving, so you knew what kind of devastation and damages it was leaving as well. And the reason why I'm pointing this out, and you were in a healthy environment or whatever, having access to those professionals and blah blah, and you probably knew them by first name. I want to point that out because that feeling of desperation and that feeling of like, I can't keep going anymore. A lot of people who never went through it just don't understand it. They're just like, well, pull yourself together and, just like do something, pull yourself together, go get some help and whatever. But I think that no one knows to which extent, how low you go within you and how much this exit seems the only solution left when you are in that state. And you are a really good example of that. You knew exactly, by working in this field, what to do, what not to do. You knew, because you probably also lost patience. So you know what comes after. And we all know someone who committed suicide. So even knowing all of that, you still had your plan. And I think that's the only thing I wanted to say. I really wanted to point that out, because if you haven't lived it, I will urge you to understand it, or try to understand it, that it is something that is stronger than the love we have for, sometimes for people around us. It's desperation, basically.
100%. And the really interesting thing is, to the outside world, I was successful, I was attractive, I looked happy, I had a family, I had this marriage and a kid and a house and a roof, and everything looked great. No one had any idea. Not even my own husband understood just how close I was.
You had someone else's dream life.
Oh, it looked fantastic. On paper, I looked like I was crushing in life,
Yeah.
and life was crushing me. And as much as I could look at someone and say, you know, you're going to be okay. You'll get through this. I'm not that person. And when you're in that position, it's like you're treading water in the ocean and your snorkel is a straw. You're never going to get enough oxygen to power yourself out of that hole. That's the hardest part about suicide is it's so imperceptible. It's hidden in these dark little corners that just get swept by because we look at the big picture. And we don't tell people when life is bad. You go on social media, like life looks great. That's not real life though. And I saw what happened when you don't do it right. I saw the disability, the pain, the trauma that was brought on by an incomplete suicide. And I certainly didn't want that. I already felt like I was just not worth being here anyway. Why make life harder for everyone else? So that knowledge was a blessing and a curse. Because if I was gonna do it, I was gonna do it right. We don't do things half-ass here. But yeah, I mean, my own husband had no idea how close I was, and we lived in the same house. And I don't think there's a way to communicate that without fear. I didn't want to tell him that because what if I did? Well, what if he doesn't love me and want to be with me? What if he takes my son away from me because he's fearful? I owned a business. I still own a business. What if I lost my business because my customers thought, well, she's mentally unstable? Like there's so many repercussions and fears that come from even talking about this. I
Well,
had
and
no idea
that's
I could lose.
sorry, that's what I want us to jump in really now, like
Yeah,
the taboo of mental health, because you just said it. And I've been there too. For me, it was addiction, which was and I had mental health issues as well. I had depression, but I couldn't speak about it. I had to keep wearing my mask, and I wore my mask for probably like the bigger part of my life, because you can't let down your mask, because everything good that you did, you feel is going to be
it
taken
comes from
away.
the mask.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You feel like
it's
if you say
Spider-Man.
something, you're done.
Yes. Yes, it's Spider-Man. When he pulls his mask down, he's a Cape Crusader. When he takes the mask off, he's just a teen. There's nobody special. So everything that you accomplished with that mask on, you can't get rid of that. You can't take it off and go, oh yeah, this is the real me. Do you still like me? Will you still love me? And that fear alone is the reason why I think a lot of people keep their mask on full time. They don't know what it's like to breathe without that mask. And what I would say is that the mask doesn't exist without you. You can't have a mask operate without the person behind it. It's just like a puppet. The puppet doesn't move if you don't move the strings. This is still who you are. It's just not the person that you're meant to be. And you have the tools and resources available to get through it. And fortunately, we are having conversations. And as much as I want to say that it's moving forward, it's grinding at a slow rate. And I know so many people are afraid to talk about it. And that's one of my motivations to talk about it is I made it through the other side. And I know how fortunate I am that that one little factor is literally the only thing that kept me from going forward.
Thank God
And it's
you're.
a real thing. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh,
Thank God.
thank God. And I'm so happy that our roads crossed and that you're still here to tell me your story. But so tell me, when you realized, okay, my date is not working, what did you do? Because I think that you went, without doing it, you went deep enough into it that it's almost like you tried it. So now it was just like, okay, this is not working, so I need to find another solution. How did you get out of that?
It was a lack of control. It was a lack of control that brought me to that situation. It was a lack of control that kept me going through it, because it didn't have all the answers, and because I couldn't control the outcome of how it went down and who saw it and what effect it had on my son.
Mm. So your
I
next step.
never thought about it that way. Like, what happened because the date passed? There was never going to be a good date for it. It's not a convenient thing to do. It's, you don't mark it on the calendar and plan a party. It happens, and either you go forward and life moves on, unfortunately, because the world doesn't stop, or you get past that date and you go, okay, well, it didn't happen, so now what do I do? And that now what do I do period is the hardest period. It's that, okay, well, I didn't go through with it, but I don't feel any better, so
Mm-mm.
now what? That limbo is just as dangerous in my mind, because you're vacillating between, I could still do this, and I don't have to do this. Maybe I don't have to. What I would say is, you don't have to talk to somebody you know when you're in that moment. You can scream, you can eat, you can dance, you can call, I think it's 988 now. They've changed the number recently, but the suicide hotline. There are lots of other resources. You could go to AA. Even if you don't drink, you can go to AA and say, I'm in a crisis moment, I need your help. There are organizations out there. You don't have to go to the hospital. You don't have to call the police. I recommend not calling the police. They are not meant to help you in this situation. They can actually escalate the situation. So just don't call the police. That's not what you need right now. Go to a church. I'm not religious. Go to a church. There are people there that are meant for this, that help people in this moment. That limbo is just as dangerous. So if you can get out of that limbo, and even if it's just a stranger, just to say, I just need to word vomit and get this out, and just let me cry in front of you.
Yeah, and
Whatever. Yeah,
there are a lot of resources out there. So, please find the appropriate one for your city, country. Um,
absolutely. And you may not find it the first time, and that's
no,
okay, because there's so many and everyone's not one size fits all. So
yeah.
if, one didn't work out, don't give up, try another.
I
Don't
remember
stop.
when I was about 20, I had this urge inside of me that scared me because it wasn't my first time. But I got so scared, I actually just walked to the hospital. And I walked into emergency and they're like, what's the problem? I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was so lost that they sat me in a room and I don't know how many hours I was there, and a doctor came to see me, but clearly there was nothing externally to do. But the time in there was enough to shift my mindset, because not everyone will do like you planned it and you had your date and you thought it through. I did a big attempt too when I was 20, and it wasn't planned. It was out of the blue, like completely out of the blue. And regardless, not to get into my story, but my point is it's not always planned. So the second time when it happened a few months down the road, because the first time it didn't work, so I figured, okay, well, whatever, I'm meant to stay here, and I didn't get the help that I should have. So the second time I scared myself. I was just like, if you feel that you're losing control of yourself, go out in public. It's weird to say, but I went to the hospital. It can be a CLSC, it can be a center, it can be a church, like I said, anything. Somewhere where someone will ask you, how are you?
Yeah. That solitude is what's the most dangerous, because there's nothing there to stop you. There's nothing there to visually see you and go, by nature, we see people and we go, something doesn't look right. And most of us are good humans and will stop and say, hey, are you okay?
Mm-mm.
It's okay to say no, that you're not okay. Most of us probably aren't okay at some point in our lives. That you're not broken. That's the human experience. It's getting the help and saying, you know what, you're right. I'm not okay.
Yeah. And a
Being
big part
public
again,
and
it's
being
like
seen. Yeah.
a big part again is the mental health, because we feel that we shouldn't be feeling that. We feel that we should be normal, whatever normal is. Not even sure what normal is anymore. But because like now I think that in our society, depressed would be normal. But yeah, so let's get back to how did you finally, sorry, how did you finally seek help to not get back, not get, stay in that state?
So at the time, I was on antidepressants. Um, I thought I was doing okay. Uh, I found a trauma therapist. So we did EMDR, which is exhausting but wonderful. It again, therapy is not a one size fits all. So we tried a bunch of different things. So we went back to trauma therapy and we started processing things that brought me to where I am. I went to traditional counseling and did dialectical behavioral therapy, where I learned how to manage the emotions and separate my emotions from the fact, because a lot of what I was experiencing was everything was fight or flight all day long, fight or flight. And that just tears your body to shreds. Chronic cortisol leads to chronic pain. I was constantly in pain. Everything hurt all day long, didn't matter, just constantly in pain. And that feeds the depression. Like it's just this really wonderful layered sandwich of hot garbage that I was eating from every single day. So we did dialectical behavioral therapy, where I learned to manage my emotions and interpretations of things. I used to think I was always the problem. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Thanks, Taylor Swift.
I was going to say,
Yeah, um, it's relevant and I love it. So, we had the dialectical behavioral therapy where I learned that I don't always have to be the problem. Maybe I'm interpreting that I'm the problem. I got a life coach who was great because he was on call and I could say, this is my crisis. And he would say, it's not a crisis. Let's break it down and solve it together. He's fantastic. I still visit with him at least a couple times a year, just because, like a car, everybody needs a good tune up. Life does not coast. And then we had talked about ketamine therapy. Ketamine is anesthetic used in hospitals in surgical situations. The great thing about ketamine is that it metabolizes really quickly. What they have found is that very small amounts of ketamine infused in IV over a duration of time will actually help reopen the receptors for your serotonin and your norepinephrine. So it alters your brain chemistry. Um,
hmm,
and it actually helped me with my chronic pain. It helped me with my depression and my anxiety. It has been the most effective treatment. Um, I did that for about 4 years. I have since quit using ketamine just because I found that I was no longer getting that therapeutic response of
isn't
all
it,
the medications. Go ahead.
wouldn't it be addictive?
So it's not self medicine. It's not self. Let's try that again. It is not self administered. So I had to go to a clinic with a nurse and an anesthesiologist, and I was, under their care during my transfusion. So basically, like when you go get a vitamin IV, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I feel great. Same concept, many more doctors involved and a lot more litigation. Um, so basically, I would go in, the infusion lasts about an hour to 90 minutes. I'd get driven home. You're a little spacey. Again, everybody responds differently, but then you're just right back to it. But everything feels a little lighter and a little calmer. You can see a little more clearly. It's kind of like when you go to the car wash and you're like, oh, I can see through my windshield. This is great. A little bit of that haze came off the windshield and things just existed a little bit better. And so we did that. You start pretty intensively where you're going, like every single day, and then it's twice a week, and then it's once a week, and then it's every other week. So you start this, you start hard, and then you start this taper process. And eventually I got to the point where I just didn't need it anymore. but I was still on my antidepressant. And as much as it helped me, I think it also kind of hurt me because they throw out antidepressants and they're like, yeah, you just need this for like 2 weeks. You'll get it in, you'll feel better. We'll get you off of it. That didn't happen to me. I was on my antidepressant for 15 years and they just kept throwing more at them. So they'd be like, well, you're on Effexor. Let's throw on Wellbutrin because you're in a low point. Let's throw Zoloft at it. We just kind of kept throwing pills in to see what was going to happen. And that's hard on your system. I had been on Effexor for so long that I didn't know what emotions really were. I had critical reactions or I had nothing. There was never an in between. It was all or nothing all day long. So clearly the medicine was not working the way as intended. I did actually, with the help of a wonderful physician, wean myself off of my Effexor. That is the only other time in my life where I was worried for my mental health and my safety because getting off the medication was so hard on my body. I have been off of Effexor now for almost 3 years. I now know what real emotions feel like. My sexual dysfunction is gone. My liver's in better health. My kidneys are in better health. And I know what actual like endorphins feel like as opposed to artificially injected endorphins and norepinephrine. So the whole mental health thing is a journey, and everybody's journey looks different. Your hurdles are going to look different. You're going to stumble, you're going to fall, you're going to pick yourself back up, you're going to keep going, you're going to try different things.
Yeah,
As long
because
as
some do need it and some don't need it as much.
100%.
I think that a big part of it is that it's very generalized that, I don't know about your situation, but I know in my country, like in my province, we have an amazing healthcare system, I should say, compared to others.
You're
But
clearly
there's
not in the United States.
no, ours is actually free. I don't know how you guys do it, but point is still people will complain because you can't see your doctor more than 5 minutes every 3 months. So, when you get into that 5 minutes, it's like, okay, what do I talk about? Because there's 14 issues. I need to pick one. So that's been my situation forever. Like, which is the one that I'm going to talk about this time? So it's very generalized that, like you said, they will throw antidepressant in there. So sometimes it's not monitored properly. And it's not the one that you should have, but like, let's say someone is listening to you today and they're like, oh, well, then I'm going to go try Effexor. It doesn't mean, first of all, that because it worked for you that it's going to work for someone else. It doesn't mean that because it had like severe side effects for someone that it's going to be the same for someone else. But the thing is, like with Google and talking about it, people will decide almost before going to the doctor, I want this. And quite often they're physicians, they're not psychiatrists.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of, because antidepressant is a lot of trial and error. And
100%.
it's
Even just getting the
individual.
dosage right is trial and error.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to really mention that because I don't want people to walk away from here today listening to this podcast thinking, I want to try the ketamine, the
Oh
session,
yeah,
or I want to do this or
absolutely.
that. This is really Jacquelyn's story, and she's sharing because she's super open about it, but it's not medical advice.
Oh gosh, no, I am not a doctor. And even so, because ketamine is an off-label use for mental health, I had to go through a rigorous screening process before anybody would even put an IV in my arm. I had to meet with a doctor, I had to meet with their nurse, I had to meet with their social worker. Like there were hurdles involved. They weren't just giving me Special K on the street and going, hey, good luck. It was a process. And again, not doctors, not going to work for everybody, but these are options that you may not have heard of. So information is great. Google is not always your best friend. Go talk to a psychiatrist, someone who actually knows what these medications do. Get blood work drawn. No one ever did blood work on me. And I think if we had, we would have found that Effexor was not the right one for me, but it was good enough that the doctors kept prescribing it. So yeah, don't take this for sound advice or, this is what you should do. These are ideas and things to talk about with licensed professionals.
Yes, and just what you said, get your blood drawn. My
Yes.
physician did that because she's like, we need to check your thyroid and your hormones. Because the women, we have the beauty of having like our hormones playing with us a lot.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I mean, we could talk about hormone therapy. I've been on hormone therapy now for 5, 6 years.
yeah,
Night
so
and day
the
difference.
question of balancing your physical too. There's
Oh,
mental health,
absolutely.
there's your
Well, yeah,
physical.
because if you don't have physical health, you can't have good mental health. And if you don't have good mental health, it will manifest as physical health. It's
Exactly.
this wonderful partnership that just kind of hoses you. It's really unfortunate. That's why you have to have both. And that's why gut health is something that they're studying with depression and having, leaky gut or irritable bowel, like getting those things repaired will help your mental health. Learning why you don't sleep well, because if you're tired, your brain can't keep up. Like there's so many layers to this onion of mental health. And just because you peeled back one and you didn't get the answer you were looking for doesn't mean you just throw the onion out. There's nothing wrong with you that can't be figured out if you put the work in. This is not an easy process, and this doesn't stop just because you feel good. Just like a pair of muscles that you work out at the gym every other day, mental health is the same. You have to constantly work this thing and adjust it. And for people that have been in therapy a long time and their therapists are like, oh my gosh, you've got it all figured out. No, 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 no. You've gotten this point figured out. There's still other things. And this is where I'm at right now. And I'm having, let's put it out here. I'm having a really hard time finding a therapist because I've done it for so long. And I've got so many of those tools figured out, but I still have a few things that I haven't figured out. And now I'm in this complacent spot where I don't want to try and find somebody because I don't want to have to start all over. I don't want to have to share that story all over again and redo all that work to not move forward. So I'm not done. I'm still trying to find the right professional at this stage in my mental health to give me more tools because life is constantly evolving and changing. I'm 2 years away from being an empty nester. I'm gonna need a therapist for that. I know that, and that's okay. That's a huge life shift.
Oh yeah,
It helps.
when my son left, I felt like it was the biggest breakup ever,
Yes.
ever.
And it's the one that you see coming from a million miles away. You're like, I know this day is coming. And then you blink and they're in kindergarten. And then you blink and they're in high school and you're like, oh, wait, no, slow down. I'm not ready. So I
Yeah.
know that's going to be me. So I'm already like interviewing therapists going, all right, what can you do to make this hurt just a little bit less?
But don't
The
worry,
journey
kids
never ends.
now stay home until they're 25. So you still have
Oh, I'm
time.
okay with that. My son is my best friend. He's the best person in my life. He brings out the best in me. He's
That's
the
so
one that pushes
awesome.
me.
Yeah, so
So
definitely
I'm okay.
you will need support to get through that. But let's talk about this just a few minutes here, like how to find a therapist, because for me, that's one of the things that made me turn around so often. And the thing is, like now, Jacquelyn, let's be real. Your life is way better and you're doing well. According to average standard, you're doing really well.
Yeah, I am killing it
But you're
as
still
far as all that.
looking for something
Yeah.
because you know that there's still some greatness that you can achieve. So that just shows that you can do that your whole life, always going for something greater. But let's talk about people who are desperate right now. Like, how do you find a therapist?
So there's lots of ways to do this. There are obviously, crisis hotlines. If you are in a crisis moment, that hotline is for you. So start with that. But when it comes to actually finding a therapist, I mean, thanks to the pandemic, there are lots of resources where you don't have to leave your house. You don't even have to put on pants for your therapy appointment. So that's one more excuse not to just ignore it. Just there are different resources available. I know that not everyone can afford therapy. So there are people that offer sliding scales. There are doctor's offices that partner with therapists. There are lots of online resources. It will feel overwhelming and daunting. So having a few things that, in the back of your mind, you go, okay, when I'm looking for someone, I want X, Y, and Z. That helps kind of narrow the field. I know that I get overwhelmed super easily with too many options. So having in my mind, like, I don't want someone who's a faith-based counselor. Cool. I can mark these people off. My list got a little smaller, even better. I don't want someone who does, uh, you know, like marriage therapy. Cool. Well, I'm not ready to work on my marriage just yet. I got to get this part fixed before I can work on that part. So that's going to eliminate a few more people. So narrowing your field and what you need to focus on right now is really good for just making it a little less overwhelming. Some employers, through your insurance, have the opportunity for covered visits. My husband worked for a company where we got 10 appointments each calendar year to go talk to a therapist. Again, super
That's
fortunate. I
awesome.
know that does not happen to everyone, but ask your employer, hey, our insurance, does it cover this? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd like to take advantage. And a lot of people don't. So ask, because you don't know if you don't ask.
Yeah, and you
Um,
don't need to tell your employer why.
of course not. Yeah. And you don't even have to say it's for me. You just be like, you know what? I've got a household full of people on this insurance plan. I just want to know exactly what all my insurance does for me. And then you don't even have to be transparent about what your needs are. You're just getting information. You don't have to disclose anything that you're not ready to disclose. But in that same breath, if you hold back, your providers cannot get to the care that you need. If you're paying for therapy, hiding things from your therapist is like pouring gas in your tank and then filling up someone else's. You're still spending the same amount of money, but you're not getting the full care that you could.
Yeah.
They've heard it all, they've seen it all. Pull all your cards out, put them on the table, let them see what they're working with, because you're not going to get the proper care if you're holding back. They're only going to go to an outside resource if you are in harm's way of yourself. They're there to help you. It's a tool. Use the screwdriver. Don't use the butter knife.
Awesome. Awesome. And there's also like a lot of support groups out there, on Instagram, on Facebook. Like I'm naming those two because that's my two social media that I'm on the most, but I'm sure there's tons of things on TikTok and everything. My daughter, who's 14, told me a few things, and I was just like, oh my gosh, where did you hear that? She's like, TikTok. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
So
my
it's not all
TikTok
bad.
algorithm is great for that. But I also want to say, if you find a provider and they are not listening or they're not responding the way you need them to, it's okay to leave that provider and go find another one.
Exactly. You're
Not
not.
all therapists are created equal.
Mhm.
So, if you're not being heard, which is really important, if you're not being heard, go somewhere else. If you go to your general primary care doctor and you say, this is where I'm at, and they're like, you're going to be okay. No, no, that's not how we get forward movement. You say, okay, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to go find someone who will listen to me.
Yeah,
Not
and
listening to
sometimes,
people.
sorry, sometimes it happens after 2 to 3 sessions. I had that experience. And then when I was younger, I would keep going because I was just like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. You are not hurting their feelings. It's their job. And, your personalities have to click. There has to be, a vibe between the therapist and the patient. And if that vibe is not there, they don't take it personally.
Yeah.
They can't get along with everyone. So it's important. Don't feel bad. Just stop and say, you know what? It's not working for me. There's something that is not connecting for me. So yeah, I remember my first therapist. I stayed there way too long because I didn't
We
like
all
it.
do, because we don't know better.
Yeah, exactly. The first he was a man and I wanted a woman. So that was the start of it. Right there, it started on,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you were already on an uphill battle with someone who wasn't the right fit.
Exactly. So don't be
And
shy.
there's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And you're not hurting their feelings. This is their job. And if they can't help you, they're better off referring you to someone who can, because they're not able to do their job. You're not getting the benefit of their job. That's not a partnership that has to maintain. It's not about feelings, it's about taking care of you. And ultimately, at the end of the day, all of this is about you. You are worthy. You have value. You are here to take up space for a purpose. Even if you don't know what that purpose is yet, it will come to you as you do this work. I
That's
live
so
a
well
completely
said.
different life now than I did when I wanted to commit suicide. And if I had gone through with it, yes, the world would continue to turn, but the impact that I have now would not have existed. There's a value to all of us. There's a reason why you are here. You are meant to take up space. There are people that love you, even if
Yes,
you don't think they do. There are people that want you in this world.
that's
Please
very
don't
well
give up.
said. Yes, and thank you, Jacquelyn, for that. And I could speak with you the whole day because I feel like you have so much wisdom to bring, and you can come back on it anytime you want. But I want you to finish to talk about the book that you have,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
I think that people could also, get great wisdom from there as well.
Absolutely. So I did write a book during the pandemic. I self-published. It's called Comfortably Uncomfortable. The road to happiness isn't always paved. You can get it on Amazon. You can download it to your Kindle. If you're a busy person and don't read but like to listen to stories, I'll actually read it to you on Audible. So it is available online. If you enjoyed the conversation that we've had today, this is a big expansion in a small book. I am intimidated by big books, so I wrote a small book, and it's great for busy people, and you can kind of pick it up and put it down and come back to it. And it's not a one and done. As you continue to evolve, you can come back to it and go, oh, now I understand why she did that. So it's out there and it's available. And I'm available on social media. You can always reach out, say hi, say, hey, can you tell me more about XYZ? I'm not afraid to talk to people. I'm here to help.
Thank you so much. You're such a lovable person. Jacquelyn Phillips, what would you leave people with, your very one last thing?
Take up space, make a difference, get up, keep trying. There is a fight in you even when you can't see it.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
having me.
Well, it was a pleasure. And to everyone out there, please, if you are in a situation that you need help now, just seek help because it's out there. And, whether it be a crisis line, whether it be telling a friend, whether it be going to a hospital, a church, anywhere, ask for help. Your life is, worth a lot. Maybe not to you right now, but to people around you, it is. And, suicide is a very, very, it's a definite solution for a temporary problem, and it leaves devastation behind you. So don't do it. And mental health is not taboo anymore, and we have to keep working on talking about it and not being scared of talking about it, because it's just as if you had diabetes, you would have no issue asking for insulin. Same with mental health. You need to go seek help, so do it. And thank you for being here this week. And Jacquelyn Phillips, thank you so much.
Thank you.